All right. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to see you guys again for another local author chat. My name is Ellen Miles. I am the Programming and Outreach Coordinator for the Camas Public Library, and I am here today with our local author, Jessica Becker. Jessica, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today.
Great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful. Well, I know that you have a whole series of books that you've written, and so I'm curious about, maybe the series or individual books. But my first question for you is really just kind of like an easy one. I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been in the Pacific Northwest for about 15 years, and I moved here from Florida so that I could hike. I never hiked really in Florida, and I just wanted to be up in the mountains and the woods, and I taught myself to hike, and um, eventually met my husband and through a hiking group and moved to Clark County, and we had a baby. And then I was when she was 1 year old, I was in a car accident and I couldn't carry her anymore on my back. And so I had to find a place for a newly 1 year old kiddo to hike safely, because hiking was just kind of part of who I was. I couldn't not do it. It was part of my just part of my wellness practice, right? To be a person. And so I started researching and finding that there wasn't a lot of information out there about kid-friendly hikes. And then people started asking me for advice, and eventually somebody told me, hey, you should just write a book. So when my daughter was 4, I wrote my first book. And now I just published my 4th one this year, and I'm working on a 5th to be published next year.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That is fantastic. And what has it been like to write your books?
It's been a huge learning experience. I'm used to business writing. So nonfiction writing is more in my wheelhouse than, say, fiction writing. I don't find myself to be a very creative person in terms of storytelling, but I love facts, and I love digging in and understanding a place and trying to tell people about it. And so I think the biggest challenge I've had is trying to do this while being a stay-at-home mom and not having anyone to watch my kiddo while my husband works. So I've been pretty diligent about taking her on hikes with me, and she's gotten really good at telling me, yes, I think this hike should be in the book. I don't think it should be in the book. And then after she goes to bed is when I write. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. It sounds like it's been a lot of fun.
It has, I've gotten to know not only about the place that I live, but also each one of my hiking books, I deep dive into history or geology or something interesting about a location. So I've learned a tremendous amount through writing the books. And so now not only can I share that with everyone that reads a book, but when I go out with my daughter, I can teach her something that I've learned. So that's neat.
Yeah, that's great. How did your very first book get published?
Well, all of them are self-published through Amazon, and they're all printed on demand through them, because it's really just the easiest way to get self-published. I never pursued a publisher. I kind of figured I wouldn't be able to write what I wanted to write if I did that. And so thankfully I knew an author that knew a lot about self-publishing and was able to pick his brain. And I made some mistakes and I learned from them. And I feel like I publish better books now than I did 4 years ago.
And you've been doing one book a year, is that right?
That's about what I can handle. I think I kind of spend summer and fall and early winter scouting, and then I write the book over the winter and I publish in the spring. And I've fallen into that same schedule for the last 4 years. So it seems to work for me. We hike in the wintertime, but not as much. So it kind of works out.
That's great. That's great. Was there anything that surprised you during the whole process of writing the book or publishing the book or anything like that, or any of the books?
I think there comes this point towards the end of like writing your first draft where you kind of get tired of it. Mm-hmm. And you just don't want to look at it for a while. And that was really surprising to me. And I kind of had to, every time I write a book, I kind of have to take a break for a month or so and just get some air from it and then revisit it, because you've already hashed out most of the things, and then it's just kind of the grunt work of editing and putting things in the right place. So I was surprised by that, of just needing a break from my own book.
Yeah, yeah. And you do all the writing and your own editing, right?
I do it. I usually recruit friends or people that I know to help me edit, but it's mostly me. I make my own covers. I mean, at some point I will probably pay somebody to do this, but I don't make very much money off of them, and I'm trying not to go in the hole. So it's, and I think it's very authentic what I do. It's like going on a hike with me. Typically when I'm on a hike with people, I say, did you know? And I start spouting off something random, and that's what my books are. And I think people like that about them, that they can connect with them because they're not too fancy, kind of like me.
Is there any piece of advice that you would give to other people that might want to write nonfiction or a similar book?
Well, it starts with an idea, right? And then you write the book, but in some ways the harder work starts there, especially if you're self-published, trying to just reach audiences. So I don't know how many people I've met over the last 4 years that when I tell them that I write these hiking books, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of these. This is so great. So I didn't think it would be so hard to reach people, but I think there's just so much information online for free, or just at the library or online to buy. It's hard to really get out there in front of people. So if you're going to write a book, you should, especially if you're going to self-publish, I think you have to plan for that you're not done when you write the book. That's when the really hard stuff starts.
That's good advice. Yeah, that's great.
Set your expectations. I'm all about expectation setting in my books, right? When you're hiking with kids, you set your expectations. Same thing with writing a book. You need to have the expectation that it's not going to work out the way you think it will necessarily.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, do you have a favorite book that you enjoy reading for yourself that you would recommend?
I don't spend a lot of time reading for myself necessarily, but I spend I have an 8-year-old I homeschool, so and I write books, so there's not a lot of time, but I did want to share this book that I really love for kids. It's not going to show up actually, but it's called Put on Your Owl Eyes by Devin Franklin. It's one I recommend to a lot of people, and it's a kind of a sensory mapping, nature journaling activity book that I think is really well done and connects with people where they're at. And it goes over a lot of the activities that I use when I'm out hiking with kids and in my books. And so that's a nonfiction kids nature connected book that I recommend to everybody.
That's great. And I'll find that in the library collection and link it in the notes for the YouTube channel, YouTube description.
Great.
And we did have a couple questions come in from the audience. So John from Camas asks, what is your favorite hiking trail?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard one because it depends on the area. I think locally, I live in rural Clark County, and I spend a lot of time in the Yakult Fern State Forest, and I really love the Silver Star Mountain area. It's not necessarily the most kid-friendly in places, but I have a couple of adaptations in my first 2 books that help you, if you're willing to drive up some nasty roads, that help you get these epic views up on the Silver Star Mountains. And one of them is called Bluff Mountain, and then another one is Larch Mountain, which is right next to Silver Star. And there's 2 kid-friendly hikes that will get you up to these amazing vistas. And your car actually does a lot of the work for you, which is what makes it kid friendly.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, second question, Stacy in Washougal wants to know, how many more books are you going to write?
Well, I just started working on my 5th one for Portland. I don't know beyond that. Every year I kind of say, oh, I'm going to take a break. And then I publish a book and I wait a month or so. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to write another one now. So I don't know. I have all sorts of ideas, but I'm not quite sure. The Portland one, we'll see how that one goes, and go from there.
Great. So how can people find you and your books?
Well, it looks like there's one copy of each of them at the Camas Library. I think maybe the first two are a little outdated. So if we could figure out a way to get you some newer ones, just because there's been some wildfires, unfortunately, and I've had to take some hikes out. That's the nice thing about self-publishing is I can edit things and change them and create new editions. I also have my books in the Fort Vancouver library system, and I just got them some updated books, and I sell on demand on Amazon. They just print for you on demand, and then also at Vintage Books in Vancouver. They sell for me, and they have a little bit lower price point than Amazon, so I can support the local businesses.
That's great.
And then I have a website, www.littlefeethiking.com, and I publish all sorts of free stuff on there. I have a newsletter I send out, and I've written some articles for pdxparent.com, and they're all linked there too. So it's a great resource. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Under Little Feet Hiking?
Yes, and those are all linked to that website. It's all the information you need is on the website.
That's great. And I'll make sure that it's linked in the description of the YouTube video as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
So would you like to read a little something from one of your books?
Sure. I mean, it's not a story necessarily, but I was going to read you something from my Columbia River Gorge book. One of the things I think that sets my books apart is the deep dive into the learning that you can have right on the trail. And so each hike description gives you information where you can turn to your kid and say, look at this in front of you, and then explain to them what's happening. And then it just makes connections in their brain. It's place-based learning. So I was just going to read you something about American pikas. They're a cute little friend that look like mice. And then we find them in rock fields around here. So this one is from the Pool of the Winds hike on the Washington side of the gorge, just across from Beacon Rock. So I say, learn about American pikas. And I mentioned the Latin name, which I probably would mispronounce. So I said, American pikas are small rodent-like mammals that live in high elevation, rocky habitats in the American West. They are herbivores, plant eaters, and are smaller relatives of rabbits. American pikas only weigh about 6 ounces, which is a little heavier than a baseball. These furry animals have grayish brown fur that allows them to be camouflaged amongst the rocks. Unlike rabbits, pikas do not dig a burrow. Instead, they find a gap in the rocks and then dig to expand the area to make a den. Pikas eat grass, flowers, and other plants, and are interestingly able to meet their water needs by eating plants. Because they live mostly in mountainous areas with harsh winters, American pikas cache their food away for winter like squirrels. This means that they collect food all summer long and then hide it away so they have something to eat during the winter months. American pikas will make over a dozen trips out for food per hour. Can you imagine going to the grocery store that often just so you could eat through the winter? When walking through a talus or rock field, such as the spur trail to Little Beacon Rock, you might hear the American pikas' high-pitched calls. They sound like meep to me. Pikas call out when they feel threatened and when they are mating. In addition to living in harsh conditions, pikas also have a lot of predators. Eagles, hawks, bobcats, foxes, weasels, and coyotes are all animals that like to eat pikas. Pikas live in colonies, likely as a form of protection from predators and harsh living conditions on rock slopes. Pikas are very sensitive to temperature swings, as high temperatures can be particularly detrimental to this cool temperature-loving species. Declining pika populations are considered an indicator of climate change. Their population is in decline, but have yet to be listed as an endangered species. If you're interested in learning more about helping pikas by acting as a citizen scientist, please check out www.oregonzoo.org/Cascades Pika Watch. So with those descriptions, I try to get as much information out there in a kid-friendly way to kind of get kids' wheels turning and then wanting them to find out more. And then actually the Pika Watch, we do that with the Cascade Forest Conservancy. So as a family, we go out and we look and listen for pika, and then we act as citizen scientists. So there's just so many ways for kids to connect with nature. And my goal is to kind of get some of their wheels turning and get them interested in things they might not think of.
That's great. That's great. Well, I sure hope that happens. I mean, we have so many beautiful hiking trails around here. So wonderful. Well, and I might see you on the hiking trail. I like to get out too. So thank you so much for chatting with me today. I'm going to get this uploaded onto YouTube, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You too. Thanks so much, Ellen.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.